Happy Friday and welcome to another edition of Freeze Dry Friday. I have two different things on my trays today, and they're a little bit different among these three trays as well, because I'm doing some experimenting, because I love to do that. But first up, I am doing some pulled pork. I realized that I don't have any videos showing how to do pulled pork. And so we got one tray of that. That's all that I could wrangle onto the trays because this came out so incredibly good. And I'm gonna show you how I did this, and this came out essentially fat-free. Now I know it's not fat-free, nothing is ever 100% fat-free when it has fat, but it is almost fat-free, very, very, very low fat. So I'll show you how I did that. These three trays I'm really excited about. So last summer, I made a spicy cucumber salad that was so incredibly delicious. And I decided to freeze dry the leftovers, and the spiciness of it was just so overwhelming after it was freeze dried. And yes, I'm saying that because you know me, I love flavor, I love spice, but it really was overwhelming. So I could not wait until I had cucumbers to harvest this year so I could try cucumber chips again and get a little creative with how I'm going to season these. So I did do these 3 different ways. Actually, I did these 4 different ways. And I'm also going to show you how I did these and what we've put on them. So I've got clips of both of those preps, and I will put that in this video as soon as we get the freeze dryer started so we can get these processed. So I'll meet you over at the freeze dryer. We'll get those settings done, and then I will show you how I did this. I had to take a little pause because my screen is telling me it is time to change the oil, so I have done that. It's filtering and I have enough oil in the machine to get started. So let's go ahead and customize this setting. And this note here about changing the oil, that will go away once we start this batch. It's never a good idea to ignore that because I've done that once before. And then, 3 days later, whatever, 48 hours later, when your batch is done, it doesn't tell you again. And you might forget. I did forget once. I did go back and do it, but just don't ignore this. It only takes a few minutes. So when it tells you it's time to change the oil, change the oil. All right, we're gonna customize this. We're gonna stick with an initial freeze of -10. Extra freeze time, I'm gonna go ahead and put an hour on here just because those cucumbers are cut pretty thin. And since I had to change the oil and now we're gonna do the minimum 15-minute cooling the chamber down, I wanna make sure that they're still frozen. Dry temp 120 and extra dry time 15 hours. That's my sweet spot. That's what I like to do. So we can go ahead and save that and hit start, and you'll see that this oil change thing goes away. So in 15 minutes we'll get the trays loaded. In the meantime, I'm going to show you how I made that pulled pork and how I prepped those cucumber chips. I start by making the dry rub for the pork, and I only made half of what I needed, so I ended up doing this double batch. But what I did total was 4 tablespoons of brown sugar, 8 teaspoons of smoked paprika, 8 teaspoons of garlic powder, 4 teaspoons of black pepper, 4 teaspoons of salt, 2 teaspoons of cumin, and about 8 teaspoons of onion powder, but I didn't have onion powder, so I used my freeze-dried onions and crumbled them down, and that worked beautifully. This rub came out so good. Now, the brown sugar did burn a little bit in the pan because I got the pan too hot. I'm always telling my son that you do not need to overheat cast iron. It heats so evenly and holds its heat so well, and here I overheated the cast iron, but it was still wonderful. Now we started with just over 11 pounds of pork. I had 3.3 pounds of a boneless center cut pork roast, kind of like a pork loin, because they only had one of the pork shoulders in the store, and it was an 8-pound pork shoulder. So 11.3 pounds in all. I was not sure all of that was going to fit into the Instant Pot at one go, but it did. I was really pleased about that. Here I am trimming all of the external fat that I can. I'm using one of my really sharp Japanese knives that has an angle cut on it, and it's just working so beautifully. It's allowing me to pull off most of the fat on the outside without hardly any of the meat. I'm not gonna worry about the fat that is marbled throughout because this is pork. There's just so much marbling. So just really focused on the fat cap here and making sure that we get the majority of that off. And a frugal tip is to save all of your fat and all of the bones that you cut off of your pork roast if it has bones. Mine had a small one, because those trimmings can be kept in the freezer and they can be used for future broth or future gravy or future flavor additives depending on what it is that you are making. The rest of the fat is going to render out during the cooking process. And you can see my skillet is just screaming hot right there. Way too high of a flame. You really, if you have a gas stove, you really only need it on a medium, especially because it's heating up for so long while I am doing this pork. I do have some oil in the bottom of that skillet, but I do end up needing to add more because it cooked away during the heat up process. Once I've gotten most of the fat removed, I am then just cutting these down into large chunks. I'm going across 2 pans here on my stove, and we are just doing a nice sear on all sides of this meat. So we want some nice color throughout because that is going to add extra flavor. And once the meat is sufficiently brown, I'm gonna put that straight into the Instant Pot pan with no trivet, and then we're gonna deglaze the pans as well. And I'm just making sure that there's good color on all sides before I take it out. That is the key with getting a really good flavor when you are slow cooking something like this. And a really good tip for getting pulled pork to render as much fat as possible, so it's good for freeze drying, is of course you want to cut off as much fat as possible, but then after it's fully cooked in the Instant Pot, you'd want to cool it in the refrigerator and allow that fat to kind of congeal and separate from the meat so that you can pull it off. And that was my goal here. So I will cool this down in the refrigerator for at least 24 hours. I think I did it for 48 hours. That's a tip on how to get this freeze dryer friendly. You can see that the Instant Pot is really filling up. Again, this was raw 11.3 pounds of pork. That's a lot. And the last few pieces of meat that we're going to be doing here in just a minute is that center cut pork roast, which is kind of like a pork loin. And that did not brown quite the same way as the pork shoulder did. It's a little leaner than a pork shoulder, but it is still absolutely delicious in here. So you can use either. If you want a less fatty piece of meat to start with, then boneless center cut pork roast will do just fine. Now I'm getting ready to deglaze the pan, so I'm putting together some bone broth. I've got freeze dried chicken broth here, and I'm just adding some water and letting that rehydrate while we finish off these last few pieces of meat. All right, here is the pork loin. You can see it looks different than the others, and it's not going to get that same caramelization, the same browning as the other meat does, but again, it's still just as good. Now I'm going in with the broth and just scraping all of the brown bits up off the bottom and then pouring that sauce right into the pan. And I'm also doing the same with the smaller skillet. And that's just going to add a ton of extra flavor into the pot. We're doing this for 40 minutes on high, and then we're going to do a 10-minute natural release before we do a manual release. I'm using a sugar-free barbecue sauce because sugar is notorious for holding on to moisture in the freeze drying process, so sugar-free is your friend. Pressure's gone down, so we can go ahead and open this and take a look inside. I'm gonna get a couple of big forks because we're gonna shred it up, I think, inside the pot. Then we're going to have dinner. And then this is gonna go into the refrigerator and I'll show you what it looks like when it comes out. Oh my goodness, that is a full pot of pulled pork. Look at this. Look at that goodness in there, and it just shreds perfectly. And it's infused with that broth, the drippings from the pan, as well as the barbecue sauce. And we reserved some of that barbecue sauce to mix in with tonight's dinner. I have different barbecue sauces on hand as well, not sugar-free. I just wanted to try that sugar-free tonight. So I'm gonna get this shredded up. We're gonna get it cooled off. I'm gonna get it into a Tupperware container, and we're gonna get it refrigerated so we can separate the fat. And I'll bring you back for that while we put it on freeze dryer trays. So that's what's going in the freeze dryer next. It has been 2 days since we did this pulled pork. So this has been in the refrigerator for 48 hours. And the intent was to let all that fat solidify so I can just peel it off. I didn't want to use hot water and rinse it down my drain because you don't want fat buildup in your drain. That's going to cause major problems. So I like to refrigerate it and take off the big pieces as much as I possibly can. So when I rinse it, only a little bit goes down the drain. But surprisingly, there is no fat in here. Not even settled on the bottom. Nothing. That's incredible. So I did a really good job of trimming that, and the way we cooked it in the Instant Pot, by the way, this is only half of what we made. Actually, now it looks like a little bit less than half. So over the past 2 days, the family ate the other half of this, and last night they started asking me, hey, is that up for grabs in the fridge still? Can we have it? No, you may not. So I'm just gonna do one freeze dryer tray of this, and if there's anything left, I'm gonna let them have it. We're certainly gonna do more because this was the best pulled pork. The weight we started with in the pressure cooker, the raw weight, was 11 pounds, 3 ounces. And after cooking, if we don't include any of the sauce or the broth and we just weigh the meat again, we end up with about 48% less. So we lose about 48% after it's been trimmed, the bone has been removed, and it has been cooked. And so that means that I should have about 2.5 pounds of meat to use. But again, the family did still a little bit of that. So we ended up with about 2 pounds total of food to go onto one tray. And that's one original medium Harvest Right freeze dryer tray. So if you want to calculate how much it's going to be for your trays, just make sure that you account for about a 48% reduction once you get it fully trimmed, once you get the bones removed, and once you get it cooked, not including the sauce. And you don't want to include the sauce because you can see here in this bowl, this is that sauce, and this is where all of that fat went. We just let it sit in a separate container, and you can see that it has all congealed. It is all fat, and there's none of the fat on the meat. So this is a freeze dryer friendly tray of pulled pork, about 2 pounds of meat. So when we go to rehydrate this, we'll use water or broth and some barbecue sauce. This does have the pulled pork barbecue sauce flavor infused in it. Not much, but after it freeze dries, it might be even more. I am just so incredibly thrilled with how this came out. And you know that when you put meat that has fat on it in the refrigerator overnight, it settles to the bottom. There is no fat. I'm not gonna rinse this. We're just going to get this loaded onto trays. A tray, just one tray. The family wants to eat it now. My tray is a little bit wet because I've just washed them. I split it in half, but this part, I don't know if you can see that, this part is lower than this part, so this part's already been scooped out a bit. So let's just double check for fat as we do this, but I don't think there is any, I just don't. And I'm just gonna break this up a bit. The smaller the pieces, the easier it's going to be to freeze dry. This is a great way to do pulled pork if you want to freeze dry it. And basically it's just shredded pork, and you could eat it like this. You know what my son made for me one time? We had some pulled pork in the refrigerator, but I didn't want a pulled pork sandwich. He made me this beautiful green salad and topped it with barbecue sauce mixed in shredded pork like this. and then just a little bit of ranch dressing on the leaves of the salad, and oh, that was incredible. So this could be used for that. This could be used to fill egg rolls. Of course, you can eat it as a pulled pork sandwich. This would have so many yummy uses after being freeze-dried. And you should get at least 10 years storage on this, probably longer, because again, I am not seeing any fat. I'm just not. So if you're going to do pulled pork, a tip is I definitely recommend using the Instant Pot and separating the sauce from the meat and letting it congeal in the refrigerator at least 24 hours, if not longer, and making sure that the meat itself doesn't have any fat on it, just like this, so that you can have confidence in the longevity of the food on your shelf. All right, I think that is a pretty good loaded tray, and I think that is enough for probably 2, maybe 3 sandwiches, so we'll leave that for the family. And this is what we are going to freeze dry. First, we're going to get a lid on this. This is going to go into the freezer for a minimum of 24 hours for a pre-freeze, because that's just going to help me get the most out of my machine by not putting more wear and tear on it. And so I'll get this in there now, and we need to figure out something else to do with 3 more trays. And I just so happen to have 2 freshly picked cucumbers. So we are going to make some cucumber chips. First thing I'm going to do is get these peeled, and these are going to go right into the compost. Oh, these smell so good. And we'll give these a good rinse after I peel them. And then we're going to try some different seasonings on them. I have another half of a cucumber in the refrigerator that we ate off of. So if we have space for more cukes, I can do that. We're going to slice this on a mandolin. This mandolin allows me to change the thickness of the slices just by moving this forward. I can also change this from slice to julienne, but we're gonna slice it. And I'm gonna use this holder to help me, because I've literally almost cut my finger off on this before. And this came in a kit that also has a mandolin in it, but this one doesn't allow you to set the size, and this one's pretty thick. But because this has a handle, I can do this without hurting myself. So let's see how thick we want this. We don't want them too thin, because too thin is not going to be good, but you definitely want them thin. Super easy to slice on a mandolin, but again, you want to be careful. They do sell gloves for this. Oh, I think that is a perfect size. So we're going to stick with the number 1. And again, don't let it get too far down before you protect your hand, or you could slice the tip of your finger off. Mandolins are dangerous. That's as far as I'm going to go. This has little pokies on it that will hold on to that slice for you until it's basically nothing left. This makes quick work of slicing cucumbers or chips. For these, we are gonna do some different toppings. First up is vinegar. I'm gonna use white distilled vinegar. I do have other kinds of vinegars, but I'm gonna try the white distilled vinegar for this first batch. And we are gonna put some cucumbers in there to soak for just a minute while we do something else. So we'll just try that many in the salt and vinegar. And now I'm gonna put water in here just so that they all get wet, so that whatever seasonings I put on here will stick. So we have wet cucumbers and we have an empty tray. And I'm just gonna lay these out. And we're not gonna get crazy with double or triple stacking these on the first run. If they come out well, I will do that, and we'll see how those come out. Because hopefully we are gonna have a garden full of cucumbers here very soon. I think we can play a little Tetris here and get a couple more slices on. That's what we're going with for tray 2. And on this tray, I'm gonna do some buttermilk ranch seasoning. I think the easiest way is just get some powder in your hand and sprinkle it over the top, and then we'll flip them and we will season the other side. I wouldn't do a ton of seasoning, because it might be overpowering once these are dried. Last year when I made cucumber chips using a spicy sauce, it was really overpowering. And you know me, I like spice. I'm gonna have to dry these fingers so that the seasoning doesn't stick to this hand when I pick it from this hand. So we're gonna get a towel and dry my hand off before we resume the seasoning. This is buttermilk ranch, and this tray is not labeled. These smell vinegary. Wasn't a very long soak. Yep. They definitely have a vinegar flavor to them. Whew, they sure do. And I don't mind vinegar on salad, so I certainly don't mind it on cucumbers. But when you're talking about a potato chip that's loaded with salt and fat, it's too much for me. I did have 2 other things I wanted to try. I just don't know if I'll get to do it in this batch, so we might just have to do this again with some different flavorings. We almost had that perfect. I might just take a couple more of these since I have another one in the refrigerator to cut down, or half of one. So he gets a full tray of the salt and vinegar, but so far this is just vinegar. So we're gonna add some salt, and I'm gonna do flake salt on these to see how well that turns out. I just think it might stick better, so that's what we are going to try. And then we're gonna flip them and season the other side. I'm excited about these. I have wanted to do more cucumber chips since I made the ones last summer, but I made the ones last summer. It was a side dish, spicy cucumber salad side dish, and I chose to freeze dry the leftovers, and those were my very last cucumbers of the season. So I had to wait an entire year to try this again if I wanted to stick with my homegrown produce. I did want to do that, so I'm super excited to be doing this again and getting creative with our flavorings. I think these are going to be great. Salt and vinegar on tray E. And here's the cucumber that we have half eaten, and it was absolutely delicious. But let's go ahead and slice this down so we can get one more tray. And I'm gonna slice this one right into the water bath. And the water is, again, just to help the seasonings stick to the cucumber. Now we can get our wet cucumbers onto our tray. This one's a little thin. Do you see how it's almost translucent? You can see through it. That's not gonna make a good chip. That was just cut too thin. A couple of those are. I don't know if you can see the difference in thickness, but this one we can see through and this one we can't. So I'm gonna stick with these. I have space for one more. Ah, perfect, I have one more. So for these, and these are on tray F, I'm gonna divide the tray just visually, and we're gonna do 2 different seasonings on these. I'm gonna start with salt on both sides. This is an experiment. I don't know how this is gonna turn out. I don't know how any of these are gonna turn out. I've only made cucumber chips one time. They were fantastic in terms of crunch and freeze dry ability, but they were really overpowering on flavor based on the sauce I used. So I'm sure these are gonna turn out good. Whether or not they're gonna be an amazing flavor combination is yet to be seen. And that was probably the equivalent of 2 medium cucumbers for 3 trays. Now on half of these, I'm gonna put some garlic salt. Oh, it's salt. I shouldn't have extra salted these. Oh well, they'll just be salty, garlicky chips. Now, I don't think that I need to write down what is what on here. I think I'm gonna be able to tell because the next thing I'm gonna add is some nutritional yeast, and clearly that's got a mustard color to it. And this has a little bit of a cheesy flavor, and it also has nutrition in it. So we're gonna sprinkle nutritional yeast with salt on this half. I think these are gonna be good. Maybe I'll even cross some over with the garlic, just a little. And that's it. We're gonna get these into the freezer for at least a 24-hour pre-freeze. I'll bring you back, we'll see what they look like, and we'll get them processed. Parmesan, or buttermilk ranch. Oh, Parmesan. That's gonna be next. Salt and vinegar. And by the way, I wanted to give you an update on that sugar-free barbecue sauce that we used on the pulled pork. It was okay, but it was excessively sweet. So even though it was sugar-free, I think they used an artificial sweetener in it. I didn't check the bottle, and the bottle is gone. But it wasn't my favorite because it was so incredibly sweet. It would have done better in the freeze dryer, so I would buy it again and I would use it for cooking the pulled pork just like I did. But when we ate some fresh, we put that sauce on it and it was way too sweet for my liking. So I would still do it to cook the pork in and put that in the freeze dryer, because sugar is notorious for holding on to moisture. So you want to use a low sugar or a sugar-free barbecue sauce if you're going to cook any meat in it that you're going to be putting into the freeze dryer, just to help with the drying process. And then when it comes out and you're rehydrating it, you can use whatever sauce you want. So if you like really, really sweet pulled pork, then that sauce would be great for you. Me personally, I like mine a little bit more smoky, a little bit more tangy, more vinegary, with a little bit of heat, and that sauce was just pretty sweet. All right, we are good to start loading. Here we have one nicely filled tray of that pulled pork. I'm telling you, this came out so good. Here is tray F of our cucumber chips. Tray E. And our unmarked tray. But everything smells good, looks good. I'm excited about this one. So we just need to close the drain valve and then push continue. This is probably going to be in the low 30-hour mark is my guess. I'll bring you back when the time runs down and we will check for dryness, especially on that pulled pork. We are 2 minutes shy of the 31-hour mark and this should be done. So we're gonna open the drain valve and take a look inside. I think I may have over-seasoned some of the cucumber chips, but we'll see when we pull them out. I opened that slowly so the cucumber chips, because they're light as a feather now, didn't go blowing around. We do not have much ice in here at all. We can certainly see the rings. Let's take a look at these trays. Let's first look at our pulled pork. Hopefully this is dry. This looks fantastic. It feels super dry. It doesn't feel at all greasy. Very pleased about that. I'm breaking some of the larger pieces just to see if there's any cold spots hidden. And I'm probably gonna have to do that in the kitchen to get a better feel for it all the way through, but I'm gonna give this a taste. Fantastic flavor. Oh, and there is some infused barbecue flavor in there as well. And it doesn't taste too sweet. These came out perfect. Now we have the unmarked tray, and I believe, if memory serves, the unmarked tray is our buttermilk ranch topped chips. And I think that those came out good. We'll test them for flavor in the kitchen. And that would make tray E our salt and vinegar chips. Those look great too. We'll give them a try. And here we have our mixed tray. So we have our extra salt, garlic salt over here. We have the salt and nutritional yeast over here. And then right in the middle, we did kind of a mix of the garlic salt and the nutritional yeast. So I'm excited to give those a try. The nutritional yeast is why I said I think I may have over seasoned them. If you can just see how much powder is on top, and it is sticking. For the most part, it is sticking on there, so that'll be interesting. Some of it comes off. I think it's the flake salt that's mostly coming off, but not all of it. So I think these were a success. Now the only thing left to determine is whether or not they taste good. So let's go into the kitchen and give them a try. We're gonna start with the pulled pork, since we are gonna be doing a little bit of a rehydration on this, just to test it out. But I also do wanna be able to break apart some of these larger pieces. This one was kind of big. It does feel dry, and I'm telling you, I am not feeling grease on my hands. So I think that this is gonna have a good shelf life. So let's just put a little bit of this. It is almost 7 p.m. I've already had dinner, so I do not want to rehydrate a lot of this, but we will give some a go. And how I am going to do that is I'm gonna put a little bit of my Korean marinade and barbecue sauce on it. This is a hot and spicy sauce. Just a little, since there's only a little bit of meat in this ramekin. And then I'm gonna add hot water. And then we're gonna set it aside. You can see the steam coming off of here, so definitely hot water. Doesn't need to be this hot. We're not trying to cook the meat again, but I do feel like hot water works better when rehydrating meat. And I don't want it too saturated in here. I want it a little bit saucy, and I think I did put a little bit too much water in there, but we're gonna let it sit, and then we'll see how it comes out. I'll give you a look at that as soon as we're done packaging up everything else. And I'm gonna put this into some of the quart size bags. I think having it in a smaller bag is wise, just in case some of it starts to go rancid. Maybe we can save some of the bags if we catch it early enough. And I think that this would be a good size for like 2 sandwiches or 2 servings, either for myself and my family or for me later in life, retired and on a fixed income. So I'm just gonna mark this as freeze-dried pulled pork. And the date. Now I do have a rehydration formula if you're interested in that. I really like just kind of eyeballing things and going with my gut on how much water I think something needs, but I think I did a little bit, maybe a little bit too much water in that bowl. So if you want to avoid things like that, there is a way to calculate your rehydration per serving. I have that available on my website, and I'm also going to have it available in a book that I'm coming out with very soon. It's almost done. So that's exciting news. I've had some time on my hands and decided to put everything that I have learned in my freeze drying journey to date into a book. I'm not perfect. It's not going to be perfect, but it is going to have a lot of recipes and a lot of helpful tips and a lot of different foods logged as well. I think I wanted to try to get, 4 bags. And I think that that's a good 2-person serving. And my hands are clean. I always wash them very diligently and then thoroughly dry them before I do this part of the video. I think that is a good amount there. So I'm gonna just zipper this closed, and then we'll get an oxygen absorber in once we're ready for all of them. So let me just get, let me see how many bags I'm gonna do. I think that is a good size there. And I think that is a good size there for 2 servings. So we're gonna do 2, 2, 2, and then 1 serving in these bags. And so I'll mark them that way. I'm gonna put 2 servings on here. So we'll continue on with the 2 serving bags. And I will put these, I think, in a tote that is labeled, you know, like check every 6 months or so. And that way we can keep ahead of any rancidity that might happen by checking on the food. And then we'll know how long pulled pork can last in storage for the most part. But this was a pretty short run at 31 hours. Cucumbers have seeds. I was expecting it to take just a little bit longer because of that, and we still have to check those seeds and the cucumbers, but I do think they're dry. And dry times are going to vary based on the temperature of your room, the humidity outside, all of the weather things. And we have just been so incredibly hot. At 5:30 tonight, it was still 96 degrees. That is really hot. I don't like it. This is the hottest summer that I have spent in the state of New York since moving here in 2002. What was that, 23 years ago? Absolutely the hottest. And our nice little 1-serving bag. We'll get some oxygen absorbers in here. We'll get them sealed with the impulse sealer. There's not really any hard-edged food in these bags that I would be worried would poke a hole through the bags if I smushed some of the air out. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, but I'm going to go slow. 1, 2, 3, 4, just in case. So I'm zippering it almost all the way closed, and then we're just going to compress it. Now, if you have one of those Avid Armor chambers that sucks the air out for you, what do you do when you have food inside that does have those sharp edges? Do you get holes in your bags? Maybe not if you're using the 7.5 Mylar bags. These are not, I think these are 6. But above 5 should get you a long shelf life as long as you don't poke a hole in it with the food. And then impulse sealing is super easy. I go above the tear notches, towards the top of the bag, and we do a double seal because it doesn't cost any extra for that extra layer of insurance. 2 seals, good to go. And this should be good for at least 10 years, hopefully more like 15, but we'll see. Hopefully I'll still have a channel in that time, and we can at some point go back through all the food that I've been doing over the last, well, now 1.5 years almost, and test some of it. I really should test some of the food that I have up there because I have been freeze drying for like 3.5 years now. So I have a lot stored, but those are ready to go into storage. And my oxygen absorbers just resealed in their mason jar. 2, 4, 6, 7 servings of pulled pork off of 1 tray of freeze-dried pulled pork. Now let's take a look at those cucumbers. I'm super excited about those. Here are our 3 trays: salt and vinegar, buttermilk ranch, garlic salt, and nutritional yeast salt, and then a mix in the middle. I am going to put these in a 1-gallon glass jar just to condition them, just to make sure that they're not going to be softening up over the next week or 2. And then I can delegate them to some bags or to some smaller jars for easy snacking. I actually have like 6 or 7 more cucumbers out on the vine that I'm going to pick first thing in the morning. And I'm going to continue with my cucumber chip experiments, especially when it comes to flavor. I definitely want to get something Parmesan done. So I want to make sure that these are good before I really get into that. So let's go ahead and give these a try. Now, I mentioned that salt and vinegar is not my favorite flavor, but I will give it a try. They are super light. They don't feel like they weigh anything at all. They do snap. Those are quite good. Those are really good. The vinegar flavor is mild. Those are absolutely delicious. Flake salt and vinegar. Now, I feel like these are gonna rehydrate in the air. So I'm going to stick them in this jar because they've been sitting out for a few minutes. And I feel like they're really hygroscopic. So I feel like they're just pulling moisture in from the air as we speak. I might go ahead and do extra dry time on these, lay them back out on the trays after this video, just to ensure that they are totally dry, because we've been sitting here gabbing for a bit. So it's a good thing I did not stop that freeze dryer. Okay, this is the Buttermilk Ranch. That one had a better crunch. Those are really good. Oh, yes. Excellent flavor on those. I could eat those any day of the week. Tiny bit sweet because the cucumbers are so sweet. Oh my goodness. I'm definitely doing more of these. Charlie, would you like one? He said, yeah, he likes them too. I got out this big jar for really just a handful of chips. You know what? I'm gonna leave them on the tray. I am gonna stick them back in. I can just tell that they're drawing moisture in so quickly. So I'm gonna put them back in for like 2 hours maybe, and then I'll get them jarred up. So I'm gonna put these ones back on the tray. Let's try the garlic salt one. I'm gonna take just a tiny piece. Ooh, it's good, but it's too much salt. It really hits you at the end. So how about the nutritional yeast? Let's try a small one of those. I like how the nutritional yeast stayed on them, so you actually look like you have a flavoring on them, as well as everything else. But since this has the most color to it, it's the most obvious. That's really good too. These are all a win. I'm loving all of them. I'm gonna come up with some more recipes and stay tuned for those. I might just post the recipe cards on the website, abchomestead.com. But I might do another video depending on how many more seasonings I decide to try. Let me get these back on the trays. We're gonna pop these back in the freeze dryer for a couple hours, and then I'll put them away. Because I can just tell. I can tell that they are softening up just by sitting out here. So this is one food that you definitely want to package immediately. I mean, these are totally edible. They're fine, but I don't think that they would last long. I could put them in the jar with, oh my goodness, what is the word? I know this word. I use this word. Not an oxygen absorber, but the one that draws humidity out. I'll pop it in here. I think that they would be fine, but I don't have any of those right now. So we're just gonna pop these back in for a little bit of extra time. Buttermilk Ranch. And I'll stick the empty tray in here too, since we need to have a balanced load on our rack at all times. Salt and vinegar. Garlic salt and nutritional yeast. And our empty tray of pulled pork, just to balance the load. And I'm gonna do more dry time, closing the drain valve. And continue. I'm gonna just try 2 hours. If it's not feeling crispy at 2 hours, I will probably pop these in the freezer and just run them again because I have more cucumbers to do. So major tip here is to package your cucumber chips immediately because they are very hygroscopic. All right, let's go test that rehydrated pulled pork. All right, I wanted to give you a look at this. I don't think I over poured the water. There's really not a lot of liquid on the bottom. So I think that I eyeballed it just right. But again, if you are one of those people that likes to do it by the book, you want a consistent outcome every single time, and you don't want to make a mistake, please check out my website for the per serving rehydration, or if you're interested, soon, my book, which will have it in there as well. So let's see how this came out. It smells like I just made it. It smells great. And by the way, I did go and get another picnic roast. Picnic roast to do more pulled pork because it was requested and requested and requested. This came out so good. So we're gonna be doing another one in the upcoming weekend. That is tender, incredibly flavorful, tastes like it was just made. It is absolutely delicious. It's fantastic. And you get all the flavor without all the fat. I am gonna eat all of this because it is really good. And that barbecue sauce marinade I put on here, the Korean spicy, is really, really good. Right up my alley. And that's all the liquid we had left. Hopefully you have been inspired to give pulled pork, freeze-dried, or cucumber chips a try. If you do, or if you have, I would love to know in the comments below what type of seasonings you use and what is your process for doing the pulled pork. I'm absolutely thrilled with the way that I do it. Comes out great, tastes amazing, rehydrates beautifully, and there's not a lot of fat that you have to worry about going rancid in long-term storage. Thank you so much for joining me for another edition of Freeze Dry Friday, Pulled Pork and Cucumber Chips edition. My name is Kelly, you're at A Better Choice Homestead, and I do hope you come back and visit again soon.